Welcome back to part 2 of learning front flips outside and taking them onto hard ground. Now, in the last video I happened to mention about wood chips being a really good surface to learn on, and I even showed a shot of some wood chips I'd found. Now, in the corner of my eye while I was filming that previous video, I happened to see an even larger pile of wood chips, literally just a few yards from where I was filming. I didn't have time to include it in the last video, so I thought I'd start this video here and share it with you. Now, if you haven't worked out the location already, drop me a message in the comments and I will endeavour to share with you the location, because honestly, outside of a gym, I'd say a pile of wood chippings like this is probably the best possible surface to learn, certainly front flips, before transitioning onto grass and then concrete. So if you are close enough to get to this pile of wood chips, or you can find another one, I highly recommend starting on that first. It is a really good surface, it's really forgiving, it's even a little bit springy, gives you a bit of bounce as well when you take off. Yeah, better than a sandpit, better than a beach, better than all of that. So if you can find one of these, start here. So I'm going to show you a few attempts at front flips carrying on from what we did in the previous video. Now, if you remember in the last video, it was all about overcoming the initial fear just to throw yourself over your head. Now, if you've actually managed to do that, that is quite honestly the hardest part of learning to front flip. I know that you might have looked at the previous video, or you might have even tried it yourself and felt that it's a long way off what you really want to be achieving with the big flips when you're kind of up here in height and rotating up at head height. But don't worry about that at all, because actually just the hardest part is just that initial thing of just doing it and just having your whole body in the air upside down, even if it's only an inch off the ground. That is the hardest part. Once you've done that, you've ticked that off, the rest is so much easier. So my advice would be to, once you've found somewhere where you can practice, to keep practicing to a point where you can land consistently before you move on to harder surfaces. So the key is just to be able to do it time and time again, just keep repeating the technique and try and get higher and higher every time, but most importantly, just know that you can land it and start to get a feel for where you are in the air. Start to understand what it means to over-rotate, to under-rotate, and that way you'll then know what changes you need to make to be able to land properly. And once you know, once you can say with 80% confidence that every time you know where and how you're going to land, it's at that point you then want to transition onto harder surfaces. The other thing you can do, which I'll demonstrate later on in this video, which is really, really important, is that if you try to do as many different subtle variations of the front flip on different surfaces and in different locations, even just different areas of perhaps the same field or garden that you're practicing in, literally turn around and face a different direction, so in your peripheral vision you can see different things. That will help you, because when you first start, every little change like that, it makes a huge difference, and it could just be a case of turning around 90 degrees like that and trying to front flip in a different direction could actually throw you off to begin with. So the more places you can try, and the more just the tiny little variations you can do when you're practicing, that will then help you when you transition to, say, from grass to concrete, and it won't be such of a surprise then when the entire surrounding has changed. The other thing which you can do, which is really, really helpful, is to utilize variations in height to make the rotation easier. So if you find a step that is anything up to knee height, for example, and you can run up and step up onto that step and then punch up into your front flip from there, that will make it so much easier, primarily because it's raising your centre of gravity by the height of the step before you've left the ground. So it's like giving yourself, probably doubling your jump height without any extra effort. So that is really, really crucial. It's a really useful technique, and you can play with this depending on what you find. You know, if you've got something where you're stepping up onto an obstacle and then rotating and landing back on the same level you started, then that's probably the easiest one, and the one that will give you the most kind of power and allow you to land it the easiest. But then if you want to practice getting back towards flat ground, then you can perhaps find a ledge where the ground carries on at the height of the ledge. So you're stepping up onto that ledge, getting that initial boost, but then you're actually landing at the same height as that ledge or step. So when it comes to the landing, you're losing that height gain, which forces you to tuck tighter and rotate faster and clean up your technique, which will then help you when you go back to flat ground. Likewise, you might even find something where if you've got a step like that with a long area of ground above it, you could even try taking off. Once you get to the higher level, you could try jumping from the lower ground and rotate and land on the higher one. You can also try things like standing front flips. So these are a little bit harder because if you don't run into a flip, you don't naturally gain the rotation. So you've got to work really hard to get the rotation, and it's a little bit easier to smash your knee into your face or your nose when you're doing a standing front flip. So really emphasize the knees out to the side when you tuck rather than in the middle like that. Although you don't have the speed and momentum from the run up, if you start a standing flip from higher up, then again it just gives you that little advantage. So I'm going to start off as I'm here. I'm going to film a few flips on the wood pile here. So you can split the front flip into essentially 3 components. The first is the jump, the second is the tuck, and the third is the landing. So first of all, with the jump, you want to get as much height as possible, and to do that you need to keep your centre of gravity high. So you want to use every trick in the book to get as high as you can. This means your body tends to follow where you're looking, it follows your eyes. So you want to keep your eyes gazing slightly upwards, not like looking up to the sky, but just like focused ahead into the distance, slightly above eye level. Likewise with your arms, you want to have your arms fully extended, fully straight up like that. When I was learning these, I misinterpreted a tutorial, and I understood it to mean that I should keep my hands by my ears. So my first front flips are kind of like this, and I was like pulling my head to the ground like that, which is why they didn't really work too well. What it should have said was that my elbows should be by my ears, but your arms need to be straight. That's the important thing. You want your arms fully locked out like that. There's another technique which I'll save for another video, which is called blocking, which is essentially making sure that your feet is in front of your centre of gravity when you jump. So when you're running up and taking that last jump off the ground, you want to make sure that your toes are actually in front of the rest of your body. If they're directly underneath or slightly behind you, you'll end up travelling really far forwards, but you won't get any height. The run up and the jump is all about getting the height, and then once you're in the air, you need to tuck into a ball. This is known as tucking, and you want to grab your knees and pull your knees into your chest as tight as you can, so that in the air you are literally in the smallest ball you can be. The tighter you tuck, the faster you will spin. Also, the faster you tuck, the faster you'll spin. So the faster that you can get your knees from down below your waist up here to your chest, the faster you're going to rotate. Also, the closer that your knees are into your shoulders, the faster you're going to rotate as well. So you can use this to your advantage once you actually start to get an awareness of where you are in the air as to how you're going to land. So if you feel that you're not quite going to make it round, you can pull the tuck in a bit tighter or hold it a bit longer, and that will get you round your feet. Likewise, if you feel like you're overspinning and you're going to over rotate, you can open out earlier, which will slow down your rotation and enable you to get back on your feet. But I'm going to show you 3 different front flip variations. I'm going to show you one as it should be, landed cleanly on my feet. I'm also going to do one that's deliberately under rotated, and I'm also going to do one that is deliberately over rotated. This one is going to be just landing on my feet as you'd want to land it. And then this one is going to be deliberately under rotated, so you'll see I won't be tucking so much and I'll be landing on my back. And then this one is going to be deliberately over rotated, where I'm going to tuck too much and end up coming forwards towards the camera. Hi. Just so you can see it from a different angle, this is showing the same moves side on. Now with the over rotation, what you really want to make sure you do if you find yourself in that situation is to make sure you are tucking into a parkour roll over your shoulder. If you do this, it makes the over rotated front flip the safer option of the two versus under rotating. This is particularly important when you move on to hard ground. Now that I'm happy with my front flips on the wood chip, I've moved over to the grass to have another go here. Now you'll notice I've taken my shoes off, which is for 2 reasons. Firstly, your shoes do weigh you down a little bit, even if it's only 500 grams. It all makes a difference. And also because trainers by design are meant to protect your ankles, they limit how much movement you've got in your ankle, which also then limits your height. So barefoot training for front flips on softer surfaces is definitely the way forward. However, once you then want to go from grass onto concrete, make sure that you practice some front flips on the grass with your shoes first, just to get used to it. So as I do these, try to watch for my technique and the things I'm doing to gain more height. You'll see that I'm taking quite a big run up. The run up is really important because any of that forward momentum that you can transition to upward momentum through blocking will give you a lot of height with very little effort. If you're trying to generate all your power just from jumping on the spot and just from what your legs can generate there and then, you're not going to get nearly so much height as if you effectively use the power from a run up. Definitely use the run up to your advantage. You'll see that when I run up, I am extending my arms early, so my arms are fully extended and my legs are in front of me. I'm then jumping up as high as I can and then tucking in and landing on my feet. You'll see there when I'm tucking, sometimes I'm tucking in front like that, other times I'm tucking underneath like that. There is no right or wrong, it's very much personal preference. I do find that generally tucking in front with the hand over the knee does generally get you a tighter tuck and faster rotation. Certainly if I'm doing like an inward front that requires really fast rotation, that'll be my preference. But with standard front flip, particularly if you're trying it off something a bit higher, then just do what you prefer. Whatever comes naturally, doesn't really matter. Other thing just to watch out for when you are training barefoot on grass, do check the area, particularly if it's thicker grass. You don't want to land in a hidden divot and roll your ankle because you've caught your heel in a hole. So yeah, particularly more rural fields, if you might have rabbit or badger holes hiding under long grass, anything like that. So do make a point of checking your surfaces before you leap. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have a little wander around with the camera and just film a few different variations, like I said at the start, of front flips in different places, over different things, taking off different things, landing lower, landing higher, different surfaces, and so forth. And I'll compile that in the edit so you can just see a few different variations of how it could be done. So one of the other options I discussed was the possibility of doing a standing front flip from something a bit higher. So for example, this picnic bench. With a standing front, you need to put twice as much effort in from the arms because you're not getting the forward momentum from the run up, and also you need to make sure 100% that you won't under rotate. If you under rotate on a standing front, you are going to hit here, which is a really bad idea. So basically land it or over rotate. If you've got any possibility you think you might under, do not try standing front off something like that. With that said, here's an example. See there that it was quite easy to land, much easier in a way than the running front on flats, because I didn't have to gain that extra height. I was already starting off from waist height, so I barely had to jump, which is why it's that much easier when you've got a higher starting platform. Obviously I lost a bit from not having the run up, but made up for that in a tighter tuck and faster rotation. Without a doubt, the easiest front flip is definitely if you're taking a run up and then jumping from a small ledge and then landing back on the same height that you started. I'll show you a demo again with this same picnic bench, although to be honest this is a little bit trickier than I'd like. It's not a good beginner's one because the spacing, you've got to take 2 steps essentially from the bench up onto the top, which makes it quite hard. What you really want is something, as mentioned before, about knee height, and I'll try and find one later in the video. But for the moment, just to give you an example of how much more height and power you can get if you've got a run up onto a higher ledge, I'll just show you that as an example. A really helpful tip for making that progression from concrete onto grass is to find somewhere where you've got the two together, so you can do the run up on the hard surface but still land on the soft surface. You'll see there I actually under rotated a little bit and let go of my knees too soon, but on the second attempt I landed it just fine. Another option is to find something where you've got 2 variations of the same thing, with like a grass one there. You can keep practicing that, get that solid, and then find exactly the same obstacle but with a harder landing, and then if you know you've done it 10, 20, 30, 40 times on the grass landing, then you can be pretty sure that you'll be able to land it okay on the concrete. So the concrete front flip, assuming you've done all the progressions now on grass and everything else and you're ready to try on hard ground, probably the easiest thing to do is find yourself a ledge like I've got here, and taking a run up, using everything you've already practiced. You've just got to go for it, essentially, but make sure you've done enough of the repetitions of the previous progressions beforehand. If you've got any hesitation when you get to this point, then go back to the previous ones and keep practicing those, and then come back to this another day. You will find though, if you can find a ledge like this to step up onto, it's going to be a million times easier than doing it just on flat ground to begin with. That just about brings us to the end of this video. Hope you found it useful. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Street Motion UK. And if you could give us a like as well, that would be awesome.